Welcome to the All Things Geekery podcast. I'm your host, Detached.
Hey guys, and I'm Victus.
Well guys, welcome back to the show. We are officially into season 2, well into the way, and we have got a pretty special treat tonight because we're going to be talking about a preview of the Marvel Universe's very soon-to-be film coming up, the Avengers Infinity War. And what we're going to be talking about tonight are some favorite characters of ours. We're going to be talking about the Infinity Stones and what we think our predictions are for the movie. So, Victus, I think let's jump into the Infinity Stones.
Yeah, I mean, those big, these crystals we've been looking at for the past 10 years now. I mean, technically they weren't brought up in Iron Man, but, you know, for all our collections out there, we might actually have a full set come Infinity War, we might not, but it's been interesting to watch them, where they've come from. Some I don't kind of agree with how they were introduced in the story compared to how they were introduced, say, in the comics, but you know we'll see come the movie.
Yeah, you know, when I first started watching the movies, when they started making this has been a long process now. I mean, the original movie came out 12 years ago.
We're at right at the 10-year anniversary of when Iron Man came out.
That's true, yeah. So we're at 10 years of these movies. And a lot of people, unless you're a diehard fan and have actually spent a lot of time in the comic books, most people didn't even know what the Infinity Stones were. So those little tidbits and references that they started popping into these movies that were kind of the Easter eggs, most people didn't even catch on to. And you can go out and Google right now and Google Infinity Stones, and there's umpteen gazillion things that will pop up. Some reference the comics, some reference the films. There's some good tie-in material. So if you guys have never seen anything about the Infinity Stones, never heard about them, we're going to kind of run through what they are. And the very first one on our list is the Space Stone. If you guys haven't watched the movies, the original scene for this came out of Thor and the Captain America piece. And there is a very special little cube that you guys probably saw, and that was the Tesseract. So if you've not seen those movies, check them out. Look for a blue stone. It's called the Space Stone. There's a small reference in those movies, and you'll see this blue kind of orbish looking cube that has, you know, blue funky lights coming out of it. That is where the Space Stone originally came from.
Yeah, I mean, when we originally encountered that one, it was our first introduction to what we didn't know at the time was the Infinity Stones. So, I mean, we saw this really powerful piece of, you know, this cube. What does it do? And, you know, later on, we find in the rest of the movies that it's actually an Infinity Stone that we've been looking at, and it's gone through 3 different movies in its before it was determined to be an Infinity Stone. So, and how it was used.
If you remember, Loki was actually after the Tesseract at one point in time. And there's a little tie-in for that between our ultimate bad guy for the Infinity Wars and Loki, because there was an agreement made between those two at one time. And I won't spoil that for anybody, but if you guys want to look that up, go check out Thanos and Loki and look at some of that backstory. That'll kind of blow your mind.
Well, I mean, and that all goes back to the whole plot behind Thanos, which we'll get to later. But I mean, with the Space Stone and its power, which starting off with we talk about these different stones: Space Stone, Mind Stone, Power Stone, etc. And in the comics, they go into great detail about what they can affect. And so far in the movie, I really think the one that has really shown its true potential, or what it actually does, is really the Mind Stone.
Yeah, with Vision.
Yeah, with Vision. All the others, they hint at it, like the Reality Stone that happened in the Dark World. It didn't really it didn't really approach what is talked about in the comics. Even the Space Stone, they kept referencing about power, just unlimited power, a portal into this other universe. So, but come to the Vision, it for one created Ultron, and then two gave Vision his power.
Yeah. Now, if you guys don't know anything about Vision, Vision is only like one of maybe, I think it's 6 people that are actually able to pick up Thor's hammer. And if you don't know anything about Thor's hammer, then supposedly Thor was the only person except for his father that was able to actually pick up the hammer. And the reference that was made back to Vision and Captain America being the other person who could almost pick up Thor's hammer. And the reason they said of that was because of his righteousness. And you have to be one of pure heart to be able to hold Thor's hammer. And because Vision was born pure, that's why he was actually able to pick up Thor's hammer. That was a direct correlation back to the comics, and I thought that was a really cool piece. Vision was always one of my favorites. He just kind of brought a charm to the characters, and even though he had this massive power with this Mind Stone, and he was able to do these insane feats and just destroy things and control things, and he brought this charm to the comics and kind of brought the team together in a special way. So I thought that was kind of cool. I definitely like the character that they used, the actor that they used for Vision. It's one of my favorites.
Well, yeah, I mean, because we basically have Jarvis in flesh.
We have Jarvis in flesh, yeah. I mean, when you hear Vision speak, you're like, it's Jarvis!
Right? But yeah, I mentioned before one area that I didn't quite agree with how they included it, and there are several people that agree with me across the forums, is their introduction of how the Mind Stone was brought into the world of MCU.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
I mean, yeah, okay, it's inside the scepter. That's cool. So we at one point had 2 Infinity Stones right next to each other, which actually so it makes sense to be there, but they could have had it somewhere else. For example, it makes sense for the staff to be that way because at the end of Avengers, they had to use the staff to stop the Tesseract from opening the portal. And they said it can only be touched with something that is made, something, it can be only touched by itself. So, i.e. another Infinity Stone. But in grand scheme of things, it seemed like they did that as a convenience to the storyline.
Oh, I completely agree. I think it was definitely a convenience thing. Now, there's one piece to that scepter that I actually forgot about, and that scepter is actually, do you know what kind of scepter it is?
I do not.
It is actually a Chitauri scepter. And if you guys don't know the Chitauri, it is actually one of the armies that Thanos controls.
That makes sense. Yeah.
That was a really cool piece. Going back and looking through the comics and rereading some of this stuff, I'm going, it's a Chitauri scepter. Wait a minute, the Chitauri are part of Thanos' army. I'd forgotten about that. So that's a very cool little tie-in. I love these little tidbits they sneak in.
Right. Well, and I mean, in the Avengers, that's kind of how Thanos was using Loki to basically try to, take over the Earth. And with this, for one, using this Space Stone to open the portal. Mm-hmm. But ultimately it failed. So
yeah, I think out of all the stones that we've seen so far, the best one that's been presented outside of the Mind Stone is the Time in Doctor Strange.
Agreed.
The use of its power, the way it was brought about, where they found it in the Kamar Taj library, perfect. I think they did a really good job with it. If you guys don't know, the object that it was actually part of is the Eye of Agamotto, and that's a whole nother storyline in itself. And, I do like how they're tying all this together. They're using multiple films and multiple timelines across a whole universe, and they're bringing these stones in to give us this massive war that's going to be happening pretty soon. The only reason that I really like the way that this orb was brought in, I do like Doctor Strange, and the movie was really cool. I loved the way they did it, but I do have to say one of my favorite movies out of the entire MCU was Guardians of the Galaxy. And the Xandar Corp and everything that they did to find that little purple stone, the whole movie, Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy 2, absolutely fantastic. The mix of comedy, the portrayal of the characters, I think Rocket.
I think I just heard a couple of Marvel fans out there die a little bit inside.
Yeah, they just died a little bit. They're like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Yeah, between Rocket and Groot and all the different characters, I think they did a really good job with it. A lot of people, they loved Groot as a whole, and if you look back in the comics, he had this big backstory, and a lot of people complained that the backstory wasn't there for him in the films, but all the other characters, I think they did a spot-on job.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, and we get probably one of the stones that didn't have the best portrayal of what it was. All the others you could relate to it. You really could. Was the Reality Stone?
Yeah, Out of the Dark World.
Out of the Dark World. I don't know that they actually really showed what it could do. The others you could really, I mean, Space Stone, Mind Stone, Power Stone, Time Stone. You could really see what they could do, and it reference it. Absolutely does. But I don't think they played it up enough. I really don't.
I don't think they did. I think it's definitely coming with the new movies. But yeah, I definitely agree. They didn't really. To me, the Dark World and that whole section of Thor was kind of lacking in a whole story. To me, it felt like a moneymaker and a time filler because they weren't ready with the other films yet. It was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing the movie. Thor's one of my favorites, if not the favorite out of all of them. But that movie felt disconnected from the rest of the stories, and it felt rushed.
Yeah. Like you said, more of a. I go back to convenience. To have the Reality Stone, or the Ether, as they ended up calling it. I think that was kind of a leap, though, but definitely agreed. Convenience on that point, but not as much as having the Mind Stone inside the scepter, but
right. that was a very cool little piece.
And last, we've talked about all the stones. We're up to 5 stones now, and we have to yet discover where the all-famous Soul Stone is.
It is the last one, and I'm curious to see how they bring it about, because, we've had some filler films in between, and we haven't heard any mention about it yet, and there has been lots of build-up over these last few films because we've seen a couple of little previews of Thanos, and we know that he's on the mission. Basically, Thanos went out and tasked people to go find these stones, and they failed miserably, so now he's all mad, and he wants to destroy the universe, and now he's on a task to go find all these himself, and the last one that we haven't seen is the Soul Stone, and, we don't know what object it's in, we don't know where it's at, and we don't know when it's coming visually because they haven't really given us a hint in any of these movies yet.
Yeah, and even in the trailers that we've seen of Infinity War, we don't see it anywhere. I mean, we see his gauntlet at periods of time with different stones. I think they show up to
I think there's stones. 3. Yeah, I think there's 3 so far.
Three stones in his gauntlet at one time is the most. But they've never shown an orange stone yet, or what it could be. Yeah,
I'm curious to see where they go with the movie and how they start it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talking about the movie, I wonder where they're going to do to some of our favorite characters as well.
Oh, yeah. I will say I was very impressed with Thor Ragnarok. I loved the movie. It was Out of everything so far, my favorite. And my favorite character out of everybody is Thor. He has been my favorite since I was a little boy. You know, he's the god of thunder. I used to love that genre anyways, that kind of Norse mythology and that whole realm. It always intrigued me. So Thor being one of the Norse gods, I just naturally kind of fell in, you know, that realm of liking Thor and, you know, his dad, and that whole genre just really attracted me from a comic book. It was very cool. You know, him carrying his hammer, the whole backstory where he grew up, Asgard, it was amazing. So Thor coming into this film, and you watch what happened to him in Thor Ragnarok, you know, he's lost an eye, he's had his hair cut, his basically leadership role that he used to have is almost estranged now, in a way. You know, he kind of had to go rogue for a little while out of the team. And now in that walk and in that step, he's lost his father. Him and his brother have reunited in a completely new way. And from a movie standpoint, they have brought Thor into a comic book level to where he really discovered his power of being the god of thunder and how to use lightning without his hammer. And that was very cool. I love how they brought that in. But I am anxious to see what happens in the film, and here's why. Because in the comic book version of Ragnarok, there are multiple Avengers that die. And Thor was one of them. Thor actually, in one version of Ragnarok, got killed, along with Captain America. And both of those characters are now in the Infinity War. We've got Thor and we've got Captain America. And see, that's where I kind of had a toss-up, because I love Captain America too, but out of all those characters, my other favorite is Star-Lord. Yeah, I know.
Peter Quill.
Peter Quill's amazing. You take a guy who is, you know, just an average Joe, basically, and what makes Peter Quill amazing is not his ability with blasters, not his ability as, you know, this kind of rogue bandit. It's his personality. It's his wittiness. It's his smart aleck comments. It's his little jabs that he does at people. Like that's what makes Peter Quill an amazing portion of this team. And out of those two characters, here's my prediction, is in Infinity War Part 1, we're going to lose Thor. I really do.
So?
I think we're going to lose Thor. Now, I'm going to make another prediction. I also think we're going to lose Captain America.
You're just going to kill them both off.
I really do. You know, unless they go completely against what happened in the comic books and those two characters being passed off, because the Winter Soldier actually becomes Captain America at one point.
Right. I mean, that brings up a good point for Captain America. We have basically the two comic book replacements for Captain America in the movie right now.
Yes, we do. So unless they're taking a whole new different route, which they may, not saying they can't, they've got their own creative ability now. But with that being said, those are my two predictions right now. Is Peter Quill, I think, is going to continue on with the team. I actually think he's going to do quite well in the movie. And I do think there's going to be a healthy little competition with Iron Man in there. Those two personalities, I think, are going to clash in a good way. And then I think we're going to lose I think we're going to lose Thor and Captain America out of this movie.
Captain America, Thor, I don't know, just because they don't have a replacement. And unless this goes along to the comics, every time there's been a fall of Thor, there's always been like another person that has worthy to wield his weapon. Most of the times it's his hammer.
It's
There has
true.
been
It's
he's
very
made,
true.
He makes axes, swords, but always somebody that was worthy to be Thor.
Well, and here's why this is why I'm saying that. One, because his hammer's now gone. It was destroyed by his sister. But we do kind of have little tweaks and tidbits that have been leaked that Thor's going to have his new weapon created. And I cannot remember the name of it. It's actually in the comics, and it's kind of a mix between a Norse axe and pickaxe. It has a double side to it. I cannot remember the name of it though. There's a specific name for it, and it was still created in the same manner that his original hammer was. Jarnborn, thank you. Yes, so he is going to be getting Jarnborn in this movie series. We just don't know. I'm pretty sure it's going to come in the first one. We've seen one preview. He is in this mechanism, and it's using lightning, which is what helped create his first hammer. So I think we're probably going to see him with a new weapon in this film. But I don't know. For some reason, I just feel like Thor is probably going to be one of those on the Ixnay list.
Very possible. Very possible. And we'll see if your predictions are true. I do have my money on Captain America being the fall.
Yep.
But with that said, there's one character that's just my number one character that I'd really be a bad thing for the MCU to do is, or go along with my character, is Iron Man.
Oh, ouch.
If, talking about Iron Man, watching the first Marvel movie that was Iron Man 1 was, man, I could not wait to watch that movie. And all through it, there was Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., which I don't think they could have picked a better person to play Tony Stark.
He is Iron Man.
He is Iron Man. But then all he's done throughout the movies, I mean, he's kind of become, whereas in the comics, Captain America was kind of the leader of the Avengers.
Yeah.
In this one, Tony Stark is. He really,
by far.
Although he's made mistakes and let his emotions get to him, he still is very much the kind of leader of the Avengers and what gets pulled together at the Infinity War. I mean, I bet he'll still be it and kind of directing people, butt heads with some people, especially good personalities like Peter Quill.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that. But if they kill off Tony Stark in Infinity War, I don't know if that would clash well. They could do it. Absolutely they could. But I don't know if it would work.
They're going to have a lot of mad fans if they kill off Iron Man.
Yeah. Now, if it's a really good passing of the torch, and like the newest, I guess you could say, Iron Woman in the comic, she learns how to work on Iron Man type suits or create her own, so she kind of becomes the new Iron Man, whether she comes into the story or not, or somebody else ends up taking up the armor suit. We'll see. If Iron Man gets killed off. My second character that I absolutely enjoy watching and just his interaction is Doctor Strange in the MCU. Completely like that they picked Benedict Cumberbatch for the role.
It was a perfect match.
Right? And how they portrayed Doctor Strange in the Doctor Strange movie was very well done and really pulled you into that character and what he's become now, and where he very quickly matured in what you saw in Thor Ragnarok, which was pretty hilarious.
Oh, that piece was amazing.
Right. In how he acted and how he basically had complete control. I mean, even though Thor did things, he was no match for Doctor Strange. And with that said, it's interesting to see that somebody that has power over reality itself, especially with the Eye of Agamotto, with him, cannot just take on Thanos. So maybe that's where we see the Reality Stone come into power there to fight Doctor Strange.
Yeah, there's definitely going to have to be some big pull-ins. I'm curious to see what they do with the characters and how they... Because up to this point, it's been pretty minimalistic with them. You know, they've had team functions where, you know, they work together and do specific tasks, but you've not really seen a lot of their superpowers really used in tandem with one another. I think that's really been the piece that's kind of been lacking.
Yeah, and let's not forget that in this coming Infinity War, we get to see the basically 4 horsemen of Thanos, his elite black guard, or that are with him and actually have pretty significant powers, enough to rival most of the Avengers. So maybe it's them that end up doing most of the dirty work for Thanos, and you know, he has to come in from time to time to pull the trump card, per se, to finish the job.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens there, because he's got a massive army that he does command, and each of those guys have some ridiculous powers. And if you guys don't know a whole lot about Thanos, he is a race called the Titans, and they're just kind of a nasty species. They affiliate themselves with basically 3 different orders. They've got a group called the Chitauri, the Outriders, and the Black Order. And yeah, he's kind of a nasty dude. If you don't know much about him, do some research, learn a little bit about why he is insanely powerful. Basically, he is a Dark Lord. He's a genocidal maniac. I mean, he kills for the fun of it. So the Avengers have got a lot of big, tough work ahead of them. They really don't know what they're going up against.
You know, talking about Thanos and predictions and everything, or leading up to it, it's interesting that the path I've taken with Thanos' story compared to the comic books, because in the comic books and even some of the cartoons, Thanos is in love with death.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the idea of death. I'm talking about the personification of death. She's female, and he is in love with her, infatuated with her, and wants to please her. And that's where you see a lot of his clashes in the comic books and in the cartoons, is that he goes out and gathers up the Infinity Stones to cause death, to destroy the universe, to please death. Whereas in the movies, and when we've been hitting at, so anybody that's reading, hadn't read articles yet, wants to stay with it, here's a small spoiler, doesn't ruin the plot, but just kind of gives you background to Thanos, is that something happened on his homeworld that created an imbalance in his mind, or to him there was an imbalance happening where his homeworld was destroyed. And he wants to go and prevent and bring peace to the universe. But to do so, in his mind, he has to destroy half the universe to do it. So, you know, that's kind of the background to why he wants the Infinity Stones, is to have the power to be able to wipe out half the galaxy, to save the other half. And apparently it goes back to something. Nobody's gave indication of what happened. Something happened on his homeworld.
Yeah, there is some backstory out there on what happened to him. Like you said, there was definitely a mishap, and he wants to basically correct it. And in his eye, he is doing a righteous work, knowing that what he's doing will set the balance. But again, I think when you get to a level of basically being demented like he is, there's no changing that. You know, there's never going to be anything done, said, or put against him that he isn't going to want to kill. Because in his eyes, it's been done wrong to him, and the only thing that's going to fix that is basically vengeance.
Yeah, and it's not like he's gone mad or crazy or anything like that. Even though he has these horrible ideas, he is brilliant in so much, and powerful, extremely powerful. I mean, we see it from some of the clips we see from the trailers. Thanos comes to the scene and, well, you're done. That's it. He just most of the Avengers are just flies to him.
Yeah, the Titan race, they're basically a god, and
Yeah.
Thanos has got some insane powers. That's the cool thing. If you've read the comics, you know what he's capable of. If you've watched the movies, you've not really seen much of anything. One of the best tools that Thanos really has in his bag isn't a superhuman power. It's basically manipulation. He would rather work through manipulating a lesser vessel into doing his work so that he doesn't have to. Basically, Thanos is only going to get involved if he just absolutely has to. And he's a good enough manipulator through words and control that's why these other races, because they know how powerful he is, so there's fear that sets in. And that fear is death. So that's why he's got these basically different races that serve him in these armies. So that's really his best power that he's got. Of course, he's got insane superhuman strength. There's all kinds of crazy abilities. There's even a piece in there that talks about he's so strong that he was able to crush the Tesseract with one hand.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's crazy,
mind-boggling. So, granted, it's we're talking about science fiction here, but Marvel has truly created something that is so powerful that it takes an entire universe of characters to come against this thing, to kill it. And that's one dude. What on earth? So yeah, he's a master manipulator. He is he's kind of a general of military. So he's extremely skilled in combat, hand to hand. He's very well equipped with different weapons. As far as his tact and how he goes about things, he's very militarized, and that comes from their home world and where he grew up. It's just part of their culture.
And probably the best build-up and longest build-up we've had for a villain of any movie universe of all time. I mean,
absolutely.
10 years, 17 movies, we've been building up to this one bad guy, and, we won't even see the end of him in Infinity War. We'll have to wait till the next movie to actually see what happens. Yeah. I mean, I truly believe that this movie is going to be a big, not a bad thing, but it's going to be one big, Avengers are going to get the crap kicked out of them type situation.
Yeah. They're going to get their tushes handed to them big time.
I really see it being set up like that. We're at the end of our Infinity War Part 1. The Avengers are going to be in shambles. And they're going to have to pick themselves up and figure out how to beat Thanos come the next movie. So,
from some of the trailers that we've seen, still my favorite piece of one of the trailers that's come out was when Captain America kind of reintroduced himself to the group. Because the last time we saw Captain America, he went rogue, and it was the split in Civil War. You had the two different sides competing and fighting against one another. And part of the preview that we saw was Captain America re-entering the room, and Black Panther says, "Get this man a shield." And here's Captain America, all black. He's got long hair now. And it's kind of a different Cap that we've seen. Previously it was the righteous leader. Now he's back because he is here to fight instead of lead. So I'm curious to see how they bring Captain back into the mix, because there's one scene where Cap has actually got Thanos' hand with the glove, and he's like everything that he's got, like spreading Thanos' hand apart. So I'm curious to see really how strong did they make Cap versus Thanos.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times when in the comic books and in the movies that Captain America tried to take on Thanos and was able to toe-to-toe with him for a short time. But unless there was other Avengers there to help him, it never worked.
Yeah,
so I I don't know if he had a power of something helping him at that point, but it'd be interesting to see how they explain why Captain America was able to basically keep Thanos from crushing him.
Yeah, because if you think the superpower level it took to just crush the Tesseract in one hand versus doing that with Cap, I mean, if you don't realize the size difference between Thanos and Captain America, I think the comic books say Cap is what, 6'4", 6'5", like 280 pounds. Thanos is like 8.5 foot tall, and 500 to 600 pounds. I mean, he puts the Hulk to shame when they stand next together.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes. Yeah, I'm very curious to see, how they play that. Do they get the size of Thanos right? Because that's another piece that's going to play into this as well. Because again, we've had Thanos in comic books for years, and people are accustomed to a specific way that they look. And out of the movies that we've actually seen him in so far, the little snippets, I think they've done a good job. And I love the character, the actor that's playing him, Josh Brolin. Mm-hmm. Is a perfect fit. His voice, his demeanor as an actor, and how he plays himself, I think it's going to be really good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we'll see how we get to actually see what Thanos' character is, because we saw a little bit of him. We saw what he was in the end of the Avengers. Then we saw really his discussion and what he kind of was in Guardians of the Galaxy. Little demeanor, how everything was beneath him, and he had, he was sending out different people to go get the orb, but we'll get to actually see his personality in detail and how I still think we're going to have basically a no emotions Thanos, and he's going to treat everything as you are an insect to me.
Yeah.
and just start collecting stones. I mean, so.
One other really cool piece, and a lot of people may not know about this, in the Guardians of the Galaxy 2, at the very end of the film, after the credits roll, the Queen is actually sitting on her throne, and one of her handmaidens come to her. They're discussing and talking, and you see the camera pan around, and she says, "I want you to meet my greatest creation. I think I'll name him Adam." And a lot, even in the theater while I was watching it, my wife, she loves the Marvel movies. She's just not a big a lore person, so she doesn't know a lot of the backstory. And she leans over and goes, "Adam? Who's Adam?" I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me. Really? You don't know who Adam is?" So, if you guys don't know who Adam is, he is basically a perfect creation. And there's going to be a little play-in of, I hope this is what they do. If they keep it to the comic books, Adam is going to play a huge part in helping the Avengers with Thanos, and there's a whole backstory with those two. I'm very curious to what they do with it.
Yeah. Adam Warlock being a master of magic.
Yeah.
Not a different type of magic than Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange being the master of realities and reality magic. Adam Warlock being actual magic, and according to the comic books. Now we'll see how they portray Adam in the MCU, and when we get to see him, maybe we have to wait till Infinity Wars 2, see him, or he's introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm very curious how they introduce him, because really the only thing we've seen so far is just his birthing pod. That's it.
Yeah. We'll see. Come T-minus 7 days from now.
T-minus 7 days and counting. You have your tickets, and I don't yet, because tickets out here for our theaters are ridiculously expensive.
I mean, 10 years in the making, and we finally get at least the first half of what has been building up to this event that is Infinity War. And I, for one, even if it's half as good as, the build up to some of the comic books and what happens there, I'm gonna thoroughly enjoy it. Man. Let's just be honest. It's Marvel.
I'm gonna be ecstatic sitting in the theater. I'm like, okay, I'm done with credits. I'm done with everything. Let me watch the movie. I'm gonna be like this little giddy kid in the theater.
Yeah.
I'm definitely ready to watch it. We've got 7 days. Comes out on the 27th. So I've got to go find tickets. May have to go to one of our cheap theaters around the area just so that I can watch the movie.
Yeah, and we'll see. We'll see what our opinions is come after the 27th, and we'll come back here, do another podcast of what we saw, what we thought, and what the future holds for the MCU.
Definitely, I am excited for that next podcast. I hope you guys are as well that are listening. And guys, we want to thank you all because you continue to support. You're still liking our content, even though we're not very consistent. You all are still listening. You're tweeting about it. You're commenting about it. So thank you for the support. It definitely does help. And if you enjoyed this episode, then share our content and drop us a comment, and let us know what your predictions are and what you think about the film and all the build up and lead up to Thanos and the big war that's getting ready to happen, and what you do and don't like so far. What's your favorite character? We'd love to hear from you guys. You can always find us out on our YouTube channel, and you can find us out on Podbean. And make sure you drop by and check out our social media pages. All of those descriptions and links will be in the links below. But until next time, you all have an amazing weekend, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.